The stars looked different through the viewing window of the Horizon's Promise. Captain Deho stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive space station grow larger as his ship approached. The Galactic Council's headquarters was a wonder of engineering, a structure so vast it could swallow Earth's moon hole. Light sparkled across its surface like a city floating in the void. "We're being hailed, Captain," said Commander Jiwan from her station. She was young for a military officer, but sharp as a blade. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease. "Open the channel," Deho replied. A voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in the universal trade language that all species used. "Earth Vessel Horizon's Promise, you are cleared for docking Bay 7. "Welcome to Sanctum Prime." Deho allowed himself a small smile. 30 years ago, humans didn't even know aliens existed. Now they had a seat at the galaxy's table. It felt like a dream. Inside the diplomatic section of the station, Ambassador Hieri adjusted her formal robes. She had represented Earth for 5 years, and every day brought new challenges. The older alien races looked down on humanity as children playing in an adult's world. But Hieri was patient. She knew humans would prove themselves eventually. Dr. Minho sat beside her, his fingers tapping nervously on his datapad. "The readings from New Sol are fascinating," he said quietly. "If the Council lets us study that derelict ship properly, we could advance our technology by decades." "When they let us," Hieri corrected gently. "We must follow proper procedures." The derelict vessel had been discovered 3 months ago by colonists on New Sol, one of humanity's 17 colony worlds. The ship was ancient, built by a race that had died out long before humans learned to make fire. Inside were weapons and technologies that made even the Council nervous. Humanity had immediately sealed the site and requested Council guidance, exactly as protocol demanded. The Council chamber was circular, with 12 high seats arranged around the edges. Each seat held a representative from one of the founding species. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that it hurt to look at them for too long. In the center was a platform where those seeking the Council's judgment would stand. Today, that platform held Ambassador Hieri. "The matter of the New Sol discovery is troubling," spoke Archon Velthara, leader of the Council. She belonged to the Viridian species, tall and elegant with skin that shimmered like oil on water. "Humanity has been part of our community for only 3 decades. Such a short time, yet already you stumble upon forbidden technology." Hieri kept her voice calm and respectful. "We sealed the site immediately, Archon. We followed every protocol. We are here to ask for guidance as the law requires." "Yes," another council member hissed. This one resembled a massive serpent with too many eyes. "You followed protocol this time. But our intelligence suggests you have been reverse engineering Council technology without permission, improving upon designs that took us centuries to perfect. This is concerning behavior." "We are innovative," Hieri said carefully, "but we have broken no laws. Everything we create uses our own research and publicly available information." "Innovation that happens too quickly," Velthara said coldly. "We have consulted our predictive models. They show a troubling pattern. Within 5 centuries, humanity will dominate this galaxy, not through wisdom or cooperation, but through aggressive expansion and technological superiority. The Council cannot allow this." Hieri felt her blood turn to ice. "Archon, we have done nothing wrong. We seek only to learn and grow alongside the other species." "The decision has been made," Velthara interrupted. "We received intelligence that humanity has already begun weaponizing the forbidden technology from New Sol. Whether this is true or not, no longer matters. The risk you represent is too great." "That's a lie." Hieri's composure cracked. "We would never—" "Humanity is hereby exiled from galactic space," Velthara continued as if Hieri hadn't spoken. "You have 1 Earth year to evacuate all colony worlds and return to your home system. A quantum barrier will be erected around Sol. You will remain there until the Council determines you are no longer a threat." The chamber erupted. Some council members nodded in approval. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. None spoke in humanity's defense. "You can't do this," Hieri said, her voice breaking. "We are innocent. Give us a chance to prove—" "The vote was unanimous," Velthara said. "The decision is final. You are dismissed." Aboard the Horizon's Promise, Captain Deho received the news like a punch to the gut. Joanne stood beside him, her face pale with shock. "Sir, we're receiving reports from our colonies. Council fleets are already moving into position." They're firing on any human ships that resist. Get us to New Sol, Deho ordered. Maximum speed. They arrived too late. The colony was burning. Council warships hung in orbit like birds of prey, their weapons still glowing hot. 3 human transport ships floated dead in space, their hulls torn open. They're destroying our colonies, Jiwan whispered. They said we had a year. They lied, Deho said bitterly. About everything. Dr. Minho worked frantically at his station analyzing communication intercepts. Captain, I found something. The so-called intelligence report about us weaponizing forbidden technology. It came from inside the council itself. They fabricated the evidence. This was planned from the beginning. Why? Jiwan demanded. Why do this to us? Because they're afraid, Minho said quietly. Afraid of what we might become. The evacuation took 11 months. 17 thriving colonies reduced to ghost towns. Millions of humans forced to abandon their homes and return to an overcrowded Earth. Council fleets watched every move. Weapons ready in case anyone decided to fight back. When the last transport ship crossed into Sol's boundaries, the barrier activated. It was invisible to the naked eye, but every sensor screamed warnings. A wall of quantum energy surrounded the entire solar system, unbreakable from the inside. Captain Deho stood on the observation deck of a lunar station, staring at the stars he could no longer reach. Beside him, Jiwan clenched her fists. What do we do now? She asked. Deho was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice hard as iron. We prepare. We build, we grow stronger. And one day, when they least expect it, we remind them why they feared us in the first place. On Earth, in a secure facility deep underground, the first meeting of what would become the Prometheus Initiative took place. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders gathered around a table. Dr. Minho stood at the head. The council thinks they've caged us, he said. They think time will make us weak, make us forget. They're wrong. We have something they don't. What's that? Someone asked. Minho smiled, but there was no warmth in it. 300 years of anger and nowhere to go but inward. By the time we're done, they'll wish they'd killed us when they had the chance. Above them, the barrier hummed with power, invisible chains holding humanity in place. But inside those chains, something dangerous was being born. The galaxy had made a choice that day. They chose fear over fairness, safety over justice. They would spend centuries regretting it. 300 years had passed since the barrier fell into place. 300 years of isolation, of forced patience, of careful planning. The Sol system had transformed into something the old council would not recognize. Admiral Sun Wu stood on the bridge of the Vengeance itself, humanity's first true warship. Through the viewport, he could see the fleet stretching into the distance. Thousands of ships, each one built for a single purpose. War. Admiral Director Yunji is calling from the Prometheus facility, reported an officer. Sun Wu nodded. Put her through. The hologram of Director Yunji materialized before him. She looked tired, as always. Leading humanity's secret weapons program for 20 years did that to a person. But her eyes were bright with excitement. We've done it, she said without preamble. The barrier calculations are complete. We can drop it. For how long? Sun Wu asked. 6 hours, maybe 7. Then it will rebuild itself automatically. But 6 hours is all we need. Once the fleet is through, there's no stopping us. Sun Wu felt something cold settle in his chest. 3 centuries of preparation were about to be tested. And the weapon systems? All functioning perfectly. The Council has been using the same technology for millennia. They've grown comfortable, predictable. Our systems are different. Different was an understatement. Unable to expand into space, humanity had turned inward. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every moment of the last 3 centuries had been focused on one goal. Making sure that when the barrier fell, the galaxy would understand its mistake. In the shipyards of Mars, Engineer Taejin inspected the latest batch of fighters. They were beautiful in a brutal way. No smooth curves or elegant designs. Just angles in armor and weapons. Form following function, these will work? Asked his assistant, a young woman named Hana. They'll work, Taejin confirmed. The Council uses energy shields. Powerful, but they have limits. Our ships don't have shields at all. Hana looked confused. Isn't that bad? Not when your armor is layered smart metal that repairs itself, Taejin explained. Their plasma weapons will burn through eventually, but our armor buys us time. And time is all we need to get close enough to use these. He patted one of the massive kinetic cannons mounted on the fighter's hull. Kinetic weapons are ancient technology. Hana said. Ancient, yes, but effective. A chunk of metal moving at relativistic speeds doesn't care about energy shields. It goes right through and keeps going. Simple physics. Simple physics built over 300 years of refinement. Every system designed to counter what the Council would expect. Humanity had been forced to become creative, and creativity in warfare was a terrifying thing. Deep in the asteroid belt, Intelligence Officer Nari reviewed the latest reports from her ghost network. The name was fitting. Her people were ghosts, watching the galaxy through cracks in the barrier that shouldn't exist but did if you knew where to look. What are they saying? Asked her second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Bora. The Council is fat and happy, Nari replied, scrolling through intercepted communications. They think the barrier will hold forever. They've forgotten we even exist. Good, Bora said. Makes our job easier. But Nari wasn't so sure. Her network had discovered something troubling years ago. The truth behind the exile. It hadn't been about broken protocols or forbidden technology. The Council's predictive models had shown them a future where humanity dominated everything. So they made a choice. Exile humanity before they became too strong. They were afraid of us, Nari murmured. What? Bora asked. The Council. They exiled us because they were afraid. Their models showed we would outgrow them, outthink them, outcompete them. So they locked us away like dangerous animals. They were right to be afraid, Bora said grimly, just not for the reasons they thought. Nari pulled up another file. The barrier is powered by stations on each of the 12 founding worlds. Destroying those stations from outside will collapse the barrier permanently. But we can't do that from in here, so we drop it once, get through, and make sure we never need to come back, Bora concluded. Exactly. In the war rooms of Earth, the final plans were being made. Admiral Sunwoo stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire galaxy. 12 points glowed red. The Council homeworlds. Our strategy is simple, Sunwoo explained to his assembled officers. We split into 12 strike groups. Each group targets one Council homeworld. We don't try to conquer. We don't try to occupy. We destroy their ability to make war and we move on. What about their fleets? Asked one commander. Their fleets use predictable tactics. Jump in, establish formation, advance in waves. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years because it works against everyone they've ever faced. Sunwoo smiled coldly. We are not like everyone they've faced. Our ships are faster, added another officer. Our weapons are different. Our tactics are unpredictable. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we don't give them time to adapt. What about casualties? Someone asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer. This wasn't going to be clean. Wars never were. We will lose ships, Sunwoo said finally. We will lose people. Good people. But we will win. Because we have to. Because 300 years ago the Council made a choice. They chose to judge us guilty without trial. They chose to destroy our colonies. They chose to imprison us. Now they will learn that cages don't make humans weak. They make us dangerous. The fleet grew larger every day. 50 billion humans lived in the Sol system now. Crammed onto Earth, Mars, the Moon, orbital habitats, and hollowed-out asteroids. Every single one of them had been raised on stories of the exile. Every child learned about the injustice. Every family had ancestors who lost their homes. The anger had been passed down through generations, refined into something pure and focused. This wasn't blind rage. This was calculated fury. 3 centuries in the making. Director Yoonji watched the final weapon tests from a safe distance. The Planet Cracker missiles performed exactly as designed. She felt sick watching them work, but she didn't look away. Someone had to bear witness to what they'd created. Regrets? Asked her assistant, Kyung. Many, Yoonji admitted, but not enough to stop. The Council made sure of that when they fired on our evacuation ships. When they killed people who were just trying to go home peacefully. Do you think we'll win? Yes, Yoonji said without hesitation. The Council has been at peace too long. They've forgotten what war really costs. We never had that luxury. Every resource, every decision, every moment of the last 3 centuries has been about survival and preparation. They're going to learn what happens when you back humans into a corner. The day came at last. The barrier collapse sequence was initiated. It would take 6 hours for the quantum walls to destabilize enough for ships to pass through. Admiral Sunwoo stood on his bridge, watching the countdown. Around him, thousands of ships powered up their engines. Millions of men and women prepared for battle. The largest military operation in human history was about to begin. "All ships report ready," said his communications officer. Sun Wu took a deep breath. 300 years. 10 generations. All leading to this moment. "Open a channel to the fleet," he ordered. When every ship was listening, Sun Wu spoke. 300 years ago, our ancestors were judged guilty of crimes they didn't commit. They were exiled. Their homes were destroyed. They were imprisoned in their own star system. The council thought time would make us forget. They were wrong. Today we drop the barrier. Today we return to the galaxy. And today the council learns that humanity does not forgive easily. He paused, letting his words sink in. They feared what we might become. Now they will face what they made us. All ships prepare for barrier breach. It's time to remind the galaxy why they were right to be afraid. The barrier flickered. Then it began to fall. The barrier fell at exactly 0600 hours, Sol Standard Time. For the first time in 3 centuries, humanity could see the stars beyond their prison. Admiral Sun Wu didn't waste a moment. "All ships jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." The fleet vanished in pulses of twisted light, thousands of ships all jumping simultaneously to different coordinates across the galaxy. The council wouldn't know what hit them until it was too late. The first target was the Viridian Collective, the species that had proposed humanity's exile. Their homeworld, Viridis Prime, orbited a blue-white star at the edge of council space. It was beautiful, covered in crystalline cities that reflected light like diamonds. Captain Yuna commanded the stealth carrier, Silent Retribution. Her ship was the first to arrive, appearing in the outer system without warning. Viridian sensors never detected her approach. "Deploy hunter pods," Yuna ordered calmly. 50 small craft launched from her carrier, each one no bigger than a fighter but packed with enough firepower to cripple a cruiser. They spread out across the system, targeting communication satellites and defensive platforms. "Targets acquired," reported her weapons officer, a serious man named Donga. "Fire." The hunter pods struck within seconds of each other. All across the Viridian system, communications went dark. Defensive platforms exploded in silent fury. By the time the Viridians realized they were under attack, they'd already lost the ability to coordinate a response. Then the main fleet arrived. Admiral Sun Wu's battle group jumped in close to Viridis Prime, far closer than any sane military doctrine would allow. The risk was enormous, but so was the reward. The Viridian home fleet scrambled to respond, but they were out of position and blind without their communications network. "All ships, begin the attack," Sun Wu commanded. The human warships moved like nothing the Viridians had ever seen. They didn't form neat battle lines or establish defensive formations. They scattered, each ship moving independently but part of a larger pattern. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. The Viridian fleet fired their plasma cannons. Bright lances of superheated energy reached out across the void. Several hit human ships dead on, burning through armor. But the armor healed itself, smart metal flowing like liquid to seal the breaches. Then the human ships returned fire. Kinetic rounds, simple chunks of metal accelerated to impossible speeds, tore through Viridian shields like they weren't there. One moment a Viridian cruiser was whole. The next it was tumbling debris. Energy shields were designed to disperse heat and energy, not stop solid matter moving at relativistic velocities. Their shields aren't stopping our rounds, reported Sun Wu's tactical officer. With barely concealed amazement, "That's because they're fighting the last war," Sun Wu replied. "We're fighting this one." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Viridian home fleet was destroyed. Not damaged, not defeated, destroyed. Debris filled the space around Viridis Prime like a new asteroid belt. On the planet below, Archon Velthara watched in horror from her command center. She had been young when humanity was exiled, barely more than a junior representative. Now she led the council and she was watching everything fall apart. "Get me a communication channel to the human fleet," she demanded. "All channels are jammed." "Archon," her aide said nervously. Then the human ships moved into orbital bombardment positions. But instead of firing on cities, they targeted industrial centers. Factories exploded. Shipyards burned. Power generation facilities went dark. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't here to kill civilians. They were here to cripple the Viridian war machine. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. 12 human battle groups struck 12 Council homeworlds simultaneously. The coordination was perfect, the execution brutal. General Quan led the ground assault on the Viridian colony world of New Viridia. His Marines dropped from orbit in armored pods, hitting the ground like meteors. They moved fast, securing industrial facilities and forcing evacuations. "Remember the rules of engagement," Quan reminded his troops over the command channel. "Military targets only. Any facility that evacuates gets a 10-minute warning before we demolish it. We're not here to massacre civilians." "Sir, why are we giving them warnings?" asked a young lieutenant named Soman. "Because we're not them," Quan said firmly. "They destroyed our colonies without mercy. But we're better than that. We prove it by being better than that. Still, war was war. Not all evacuations happened in time. Not all warnings were received. People died." Quan hated every casualty report, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. This was the path humanity had chosen. Back in Council space, Archon Velthara finally managed to establish communication with the other Council leaders. What she saw terrified her. All 12 founding worlds were under attack. Their fleets were being systematically destroyed. Their industries were being dismantled. "How is this possible?" demanded one Council member, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell. "They were primitive when we exiled them. 3 centuries is nothing." 3 centuries was everything, Velthara said quietly. "We gave them time to prepare, time to unite, time to hate. We did this to ourselves." She opened a channel to Admiral Sunwoo, broadcasting on all human frequencies. "This is Archon Velthara of the Galactic Council. I am authorized to offer the immediate lifting of your exile. You will be restored to full Council membership. We will negotiate reparations. Please cease your attacks." The response came not from Sunwoo but broadcast across every Council communication channel in the galaxy. Every species heard it. "You exiled us when we asked for justice." Sunwoo's voice was cold, empty of emotion. "You destroyed our colonies when we tried to evacuate peacefully. You imprisoned us for 300 years for crimes we did not commit. You ignored our innocence and let your fear make our decisions. Now you face the humanity you created. 300 years of anger united by a single purpose. You will not negotiate with us. You will surrender to us, and you will face justice for what you did." The broadcast ended. The attacks continued. On the colony world of New Viridia, Lieutenant Salmon and her squad entered an evacuated factory complex. Their orders were to place demolition charges on the main reactors. As she worked, she noticed something on a wall. A memorial plaque. "Hey, Sergeant," she called to her squad leader. "Look at this." The plaque showed names and dates. Viridian workers who had died in industrial accidents over the centuries. Families. People who had lives and dreams and loved ones. Just like humans. "They're people too," Solman said quietly. "Yeah," her sergeant replied. "They are. But their leaders made a choice 300 years ago. We're making them pay for it, is that right?" The sergeant was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know anymore. But orders are orders. Place the charges," the war spread. Minor species that had been subordinate to the Council saw opportunity. Some joined humanity, viewing them as liberators. Others tried to stay neutral. A few fought alongside the Council out of loyalty or fear. Captain Yuna's stealth ships infiltrated deep into Council territory, destroying supply lines and communication hubs. Her crews were the best of the best, trained for decades in tactics the Council had never imagined. "Target is a Council supply depot," Yuna told her crew as they approached another objective. "Military supplies only, but it's defended by civilian freighters pressed into service." "Do we give them a chance to surrender?" asked Donga. "Always," Yuna said. "We're not monsters, but if they refuse, we do our job." The freighters surrendered. Their crews were terrified, confused, wondering why this was happening. Yuna took no pleasure in their fear. This was just war, grinding and terrible and necessary. 2 years passed. Half the Council worlds had surrendered. The others fought on, but without hope. Human forces were everywhere, unstoppable, relentless. The galaxy that had once exiled humanity now cowered before it. Admiral Sunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, older now, tired. Victory after victory, but the cost was staggering. Millions of human soldiers dead, billions of aliens displaced or killed. He wondered sometimes if this was what his ancestors had wanted. Revenge? Or just recognition that they'd been wronged? "Sir, we're approaching Sanctum Prime," reported his navigation officer. Sanctum Prime, the Council's capital. where it had all begun 3 centuries ago. The final target. All ships battle stations, Sunwoo ordered. It ends here. The siege of Sanctum Prime began at dawn local time. The Council had gathered their remaining fleets for one last defense. It was impressive. Thousands of ships from dozens of species united in desperation. Captain Daiho Su, grandson of the original captain who had witnessed the exile, commanded the vanguard. His great-grandfather's journals had shaped his entire life. Now he was here, in the place where humanity's nightmare began. For every colony they destroyed, he whispered, for every human who died in exile, for 300 years of chains. Then he gave the order, "All ships attack!" The battle for Sanctum Prime raged for 3 days. The station that had once seemed so majestic to Captain Daiho's grandfather was now a fortress under siege. Defense platforms fired constantly. Council ships threw themselves at the human fleet with desperate courage. They knew if Sanctum Prime fell, the war was over. Admiral Sunwoo watched the battle unfold from his command center, thousands of light years away on Mars. The casualties scrolled across his screen in an endless stream. So many dead, so much destruction. He'd been fighting for 2 years now and he was tired. Tired of war, tired of death, but he couldn't stop. Not yet. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Diplomatic Officer Haeun," his aide said. "She requests immediate counsel." Sunwoo sighed. Haeun had been a thorn in his side for months now. She led a small but growing faction of humans who argued that the war had gone far enough. That vengeance was becoming something worse. Put her through. Haeun's face appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted. "Admiral, 3 more Council worlds have offered conditional surrender. They're willing to disarm, pay reparations, and submit to human oversight. But you've refused every offer." "Because the conditions aren't enough," Sunwoo said flatly. "All 12 founding species must surrender. The ones who voted for our exile. Not just some of them. All of them. Why? We've already won. Half the galaxy is in ruins. Billions have been displaced. How many more need to suffer before you're satisfied?" "This isn't about satisfaction. It's about justice, is it?" Haeun challenged. "Or is it about revenge?" Sunwoo's jaw tightened. Those worlds made a choice 3 centuries ago. They chose to exile us based on lies and fear. They destroyed our colonies. They killed our people. They need to answer for that. They will answer for it. But right now you're creating new victims, new people who will grow up hating us the way we grew up hating them. When does it end? When the job is finished. Haeun closed her eyes. "I hope you know what you're doing, Admiral. Because history will judge us for this. All of us." The transmission ended. Sunwoo sat in silence for a long moment. Then he pulled up the casualty reports again. Human casualties. Alien casualties. The numbers were staggering. Haeun was right about one thing. They were creating new victims every day. But what choice did he have? Stop now and the Council would rebuild. Wait a few centuries and they'd come for humanity again. No, better to end this permanently, no matter the cost. On Sanctum Prime, Captain Daiho Sek led a boarding team onto the station itself. Fighting inside the massive structure was brutal. Narrow corridors, ambushes around every corner. His Marines were the best, but they were taking casualties. "Sir, we've breached the Central Archives," reported Lieutenant Soman. She'd been promoted after her exemplary service on New Viridia. "Secure it," Daiho ordered, "and get our tech specialists in there. I want to know everything the Council was hiding." The archives were vast, containing millennia of Council history. Human specialists worked frantically to download everything before someone could destroy it. What they found made Daiho's blood run cold. "Captain, you need to see this," called one specialist, a young man named Junho. Daiho looked at the screen. It was a Council document dated 302 years ago, a planning document written 2 years before humanity's exile. It outlined the entire scheme. The planted evidence, the false intelligence reports. The decision to exile humanity before they became too powerful. But there was more. A second phase planned for 50 years later. Complete extermination. The Council had intended to wait until humanity was weak from isolation, then sterilize the Sol system. They'd planned genocide. "They were going to kill us all," Daiho whispered. "The exile wasn't punishment," Junho said, his voice shaking. "It was preparation. They were going to murder every human in existence." Daiho transmitted the documents to Admiral Sunwoo immediately. Within hours, every human commander had seen them. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just about exile anymore. The Council had literally planned to exterminate humanity. But it changed something else too. On a dozen worlds, a species called the Karathi lived in peace. They were a minor race, barely noticed by the Council. Their leader, a woman named Isara, had watched the war with growing interest. When the documents were leaked to the broader galaxy, Isara made a decision. She broadcast a message across Karathi space. "The Council has ruled us for millennia," she told her people. They claimed to bring peace and order. But these documents show the truth. They were willing to exterminate an entire species because of fear. If they would do this to humanity, what would they do to us? Within days, the Karathi rose in rebellion. They weren't the only ones. Minor species across the galaxy saw the documents and realized their overlords were not benevolent protectors, but fearful tyrants. The galaxy fractured. Archon Velthara watched her entire civilization crumbling. The human war was bad enough. Now she faced rebellions from within. And the worst part was she couldn't argue with the rebels. The documents were real. Her predecessors had planned genocide. She made contact with diplomatic officer Hayan through back channels. "I need to speak with whoever's really in charge," she said bluntly. "Not through military channels. Not formally. Just two people trying to stop a catastrophe." Hayan arranged the meeting. A neutral location. A small moon where neither side had strategic interests. Velthara arrived with minimal security. So did Admiral Sunwoo. They met in a prefabricated shelter, just the two of them. Sunwoo sat across from the being whose species had proposed humanity's exile. He felt rage boiling in his chest, but he forced it down. "Why are you here?" he asked. "To offer you a choice," Velthara replied. "You've won. We both know it. You can continue this war until every Council world is ashes. You can kill billions more, or we can end it now. The terms haven't changed. Full surrender. All 12 founding species." "Yes," Velthara agreed. "But I'm offering something more. Help me dissolve the Council entirely. Not reform it, not rebuild it, end it. Create something new with humanity at the center." Sunwoo stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because the Council is finished anyway. Better to end it with some dignity than watch it die in fire." She paused. "And because those documents are real. My predecessors planned to exterminate your species. That's unforgivable. Justice demands accountability. Justice demands punishment, does it? Or does justice demand that we stop the cycle of violence before it destroys everything?" Velthara leaned forward. "Your officer Hayan is right. Every day this war continues, you create new victims. New orphans. New people with reason to hate. Eventually, someone will hate you enough to plan what we planned for you. And the cycle continues forever." Sunwoo wanted to reject it. Every fiber of his being screamed for revenge. 300 years of anger demanded satisfaction. But he thought of the casualty reports. The endless lists of dead, human and alien alike. "What are you proposing?" he asked quietly. "We reveal everything. All the Council's crimes. Not just against humanity, but against every species we've dominated. We dismantle the Council completely. The founding species submit to war crimes tribunals. Those responsible for the planned genocide are punished. And we build something new. A real democracy where no single species can do what we did to you. And if I refuse, then Sanctum Prime falls," Velthara said simply. "My species is destroyed. You win completely, but the cost will haunt humanity forever. Because eventually you'll become what we were, the powerful, the feared, the tyrants, and someone will exile you, and the cycle starts again." Sunwoo sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the war continued. Ships died. People died. The galaxy burned. He thought about his great-grandfather, who had witnessed the original exile. What would he want? Revenge or justice? Finally, he spoke. "I need to consult with the human government. And Hayan's faction. This isn't a decision I can make alone." "Take your time," Velthara said, "but not too much. Every hour more people die." The debate raged across human space. Some wanted total victory, the complete destruction of every Council world. Others saw Velthara's proposal as a chance to break the cycle. Hayan argued passionately for peace. Military leaders argued for finishing the war. On Sanctum Prime, Captain Deho held the station but couldn't advance further. The Council's last defenders fought with desperate courage, buying time for their leaders to escape or negotiate. Admiral Sunwoo made his decision. He called Velthara. "We accept your proposal," Admiral Sunwoo told Archon Velthara. But there are conditions. They met again on the same neutral moon. This time, Diplomatic Officer Hayun joined them, along with representatives from the Karathi Rebellion and several other minor species who had risen against the Council. The Council must be dissolved completely, Sun Wu said. Not reformed, not restructured, ended. Agreed, Velthara replied. All Council records will be opened to public review. Every crime, every secret, every hidden decision. The galaxy deserves to know what their leaders were really doing. Agreed. The 12 founding species will disarm their military forces beyond what's needed for basic defense. They will submit to human oversight for a period of no less than 50 years. Velthara hesitated. That's a long time. 300 years is longer, Hayun said quietly. You're getting off easy. Agreed, Velthara said finally. War crimes tribunals will be established, Sun Wu continued. Anyone involved in planning genocide against humanity will be prosecuted. No exceptions. No pardons. Some of those individuals are still in power, Velthara warned. Then they need to step down, or be removed. Agreed. Finally, a new governing body will be formed. The Galactic Assembly. Every species gets equal representation, regardless of size or power. Humanity will hold a permanent seat with veto authority for the first 50 years, to ensure this never happens again. This time Velthara didn't hesitate. Agreed. Isara, the Karathi leader, spoke up. My people also want representation. We're not going back to being ignored. All species will be represented, Hayun assured her. That's the point. No more ruling class. No more subordinate races. True equality. The treaty was signed 3 days later. Fighting stopped immediately across most of the galaxy. Some Council loyalists refused to surrender and had to be defeated militarily, but they were few. Most were exhausted and ready for the war to end. The revelations hit the galaxy like a shockwave. The Council's archives were opened, and what they contained horrified everyone. The planned genocide of humanity was just the beginning. The Council had suppressed dozens of species, stolen technology, and maintained power through fear and manipulation for millennia. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Humanity went from being seen as vengeful conquerors to justified victims. The Council's crimes dwarfed anything humanity had done during the war. War crimes tribunals began within weeks. Former Council leaders were brought before courts composed of judges from multiple species. The trials were fair but thorough. Those found guilty of planning genocide faced severe punishment. Some were imprisoned. Others were exiled to remote worlds. A few chose to end their own lives rather than face justice. Velthara herself stood trial. She hadn't been involved in the original plot against humanity, but she had led the Council during the war. The court found her guilty of lesser charges related to attempting to maintain the Council's authority. Her sentence was house arrest on her homeworld and a permanent ban from holding public office. I accept the court's judgment, she said with dignity. My predecessors created this nightmare. I failed to end it quickly enough. Justice has been served. The Galactic Assembly convened for the first time on Sanctum Prime, in the very chambers where humanity had been exiled 3 centuries before. The symbolism was intentional. Representatives from over 200 species gathered to create a new order. Ambassador Hayun was chosen to lead the first session. She stood where Velthara had once stood and looked out at the assembled aliens. So many species, so much diversity, all of them trying to build something better. 300 years ago in this very room my people were exiled, she began. We were judged guilty without trial. Our colonies were destroyed. We were imprisoned. But we survived. And we returned, not to destroy, though we could have, but to demand justice and ensure this never happens to anyone again. She paused, letting her words sink in. The old Council ruled through fear. They maintained order by suppressing those they deemed threatening. But fear doesn't bring peace. It only delays conflict. Real peace requires justice. Real peace requires equality. Real peace requires that we see each other not as threats, but as fellow travelers in this galaxy. The Assembly ratified the new charter unanimously. The Galactic Assembly would have no permanent ruling class. Decisions would be made by majority vote, with protections for minority species. Military forces would be limited and transparent. Technology would be shared freely. No species would ever be exiled again without overwhelming evidence of actual crimes. On Earth, Admiral Sun Wu retired from military service. He was only 54, young by modern standards, but the war had aged him. He gave his final speech from the same lunar station where he'd watched the barrier activate 3 centuries of waiting ago. "We won," he told the billions watching across human space. But victory came at a terrible cost. Millions of our people died. Billions of others suffered because of choices made centuries before they were born. I hope we never have to fight such a war again. He paused, looking out at the stars that were finally open to humanity once more. But if we do, I hope we remember what we fought for. Not conquest. Not revenge, justice, the right to exist without fear. The right to be judged by our actions, not by others' fears. We have that right now. Let's make sure everyone else does too. Captain Yuna transitioned from military command to leading the new peacekeeping fleet. Her ships would patrol the galaxy, ensuring no species tried to dominate others. It was strange going from warrior to guardian, but she adapted. Humans were good at adapting. General Quan helped establish the Reconstruction Corps. Human engineers and soldiers who had destroyed so much now worked to rebuild. They helped repair damaged worlds, restore infrastructure, and aid refugees in returning home. It didn't erase what they'd done, but it was a start. Captain Daiho, too, kept his great-grandfather's journals and added his own. Someday, his grandchildren would read them and understand the full story. The exile, the war, the peace. All of it, preserved so future generations would remember. The 12 founding species of the Old Council accepted their reduced status with varying degrees of grace. The Viridians were perhaps the most accepting. Velthara, despite her house arrest, became an advocate for the new system. She spent her remaining years writing about the Council's mistakes, ensuring future generations understood how fear and pride had nearly destroyed the galaxy. 50 years after the war ended, Admiral Sun Wu attended a ceremony on New Sol. The colony had been rebuilt better than before. Where once there had been a derelict alien ship that started everything, now stood a monument. Sun Wu was 94 now, old even by modern medical standards. He walked slowly, aided by a younger officer named Mirai. The monument was simple, a wall of names. Every human who died during the exile and the war. Every alien civilian who perished in the fighting. All of them remembered. Do you think it was worth it? Mirai asked quietly. Sun Wu was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he admitted. We got justice. We built something better. But the cost was staggering. Would you do it differently? I'd like to think so. But I don't know. When you spend 300 years preparing for war, peace becomes hard to imagine. He touched the monument gently. I hope future generations do better than we did. On Earth, in universities and schools across human space, young people studied the war. They learned about the exile, the anger, the violence, and finally the peace. Teachers emphasized the costs and the lessons. One such teacher was Elder Minho II, great-grandson of the original Dr. Minho. He stood before a class of mixed species humans and aliens learning together, something that would have been impossible 50 years before. The exile happened because of fear, he told his students. The council feared what humanity might become, so they tried to cage us. But cages don't prevent danger. They create it. 300 years of isolation turned us into the very thing they feared. A young Viridian student raised her hand. But you won the war. Doesn't that prove you were dangerous? We were dangerous, Minho agreed. But we became dangerous because we were caged. That's the lesson. Fear breeds fear. Violence breeds violence. If the council had worked with humanity instead of against us, none of this would have happened. A human student spoke up. So we were victims? We were victims, Minho confirmed. But we also became victimizers. That's the hard truth. Being wrong doesn't give you the right to wrong others. Our ancestors struggled with that. Some wanted pure revenge. Others wanted justice. In the end, we got both, and neither felt as good as we hoped. What should we learn from this? Asked a Karathi student. Minho smiled. That the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to end it. That fear is a terrible foundation for policy. That different doesn't mean dangerous, and most importantly that we're all just people trying to survive in a vast, uncaring universe. We're better off helping each other than fearing each other. The memorial stood at the edge of the Sol system, right where the barrier had once imprisoned humanity. It was visible to every ship entering or leaving the system. The inscription was written in over 200 languages, every species in the Galactic Assembly. In memory of those lost to fear, may we never exile each other again. Ships from across the galaxy passed the memorial daily,